Next, let's move on to a pretty awkward, pretty weird game across the board. It's the Fenway Bowl, featuring the Louisville Cardinal and the Cincinnati Bearcats at Fenway Park. This is the third annual Fenway Park game, but the first one that they've actually played because the previous two have been canceled because of COVID. This is also a battle for the Keg of Nails trophy, a rekindling of a rivalry that these two teams have had going back to the Big East days. And to add a little bit more spice into the rivalry, Cincinnati just hired Louisville's head coach away. So this one is as spicy as it gets. It's actually the Wasabi Fenway Bowl. I'm not even kidding you. That is actually the sponsor of it. Not the sauce, but some random company that I could not tell you what they do. Bearcats favored by 1.5 here. Basically a coin flip game. Blake, who do you like here?
This game is absolutely disgusting. Like, it has the potential with the storylines. We know one team hired the other team's head coach away, but you dig into that storyline first. Scott Satterfield, Louisville fans hated him and wanted him gone so bad that honestly Cincinnati hiring him away is a godsend that they could then bring in Jeff Brom, who they originally wanted before they hired Satterfield in the first place. So even that, like, you look at that storyline, that kind of gets debunked like right off the bat. Then you look on who's even playing in this game. So Cincinnati has about, it seems like half their team in the transfer portal or opting out just because Luke Fickle left. Ben Bryant, who is their quarterback, really not that good. Like, Cincinnati would have been fantastic if they had average quarterback play this year, and they didn't. So Ben Bryant out for the season, and they're going to their backup. So automatically, I think Cincinnati gross can't back them. But then I look at Louisville. They lose their head coach, which I don't think really matters, but Louisville is driven by Malik Cunningham. He is opting out to go to the NFL draft, and I also think he hurt his shoulder in the game versus Kentucky, so he doesn't want to risk it. They have a whole bunch of opt-outs, a lot of running, like their whole running back stable, tight end, some corners. There's nobody playing in this game, but I have to back a team. I'm going Louisville. I just feel like the losses are a little bit less. Like, Malik Cunningham's huge, but I just feel like there's enough talent still kind of there that they can rope something together. Cincinnati's gutted. They've lost basically the coach that has taken them to the highest level. They have no quarterback. They have no any pieces around him. This is a gross game. Do not bet this. Like, if you are going to bet this, don't wager a lot of money on this because we don't know what the hell's going to happen. So give me the Cardinal, but I'm out. Like, I'm not, there's no way I bet this game. There's no way. This is gross.
So surely they give out the rivalry trophy too, in addition to the weird Fenway Bowl trophy, right?
They do. They have to. You have to.
Especially when it's something called the Keg of Nails. It's not something garbage like, what Penn State and Michigan State have. So you got to do it. Ty, your thoughts on the game? Who do you like here?
Yeah, first off, you've got to put up the belt every time you fight. That's everyone knows that. It's like when you have OU and Texas playing in the Big 12 championship, the golden hat's got to be up for grabs.
It wasn't.
It's a trophy. I know, and I still disagree with that decision. You got to put up the belt every time you fight. So that's how I feel about that. Wasabi, the sponsor, we're not going to start denigrating sponsors. They've claimed to be an Amazon Web Services killer. I don't know about that one because what is Wasabi Cloud Services? No one knows. But yeah, in this one, I hate both of these teams. Cincinnati, obviously, known commuter school that just sort of didn't even do their own thing. They looked at what UCF was doing. UCF didn't even invent being the flashy group of 5 team that just makes BS claims and tries to convince people they're better than they are. But Cincy kind of looked at that and said, hey, it works for you at UCF. Let's be a group of 5 team with a group of 5 schedule. And let's try to just beat up on these teams, just win games we're supposed to win and convince people that we're better than we are. And then it worked for them. They made it to the playoffs. We all saw how that happened. So because of that, even though I also dislike Louisville, I don't know why, actually, but I also dislike Louisville, but it's the lesser of two evils here. Give me the Louisville Cardinals. I liked hearing what Blake was saying. I wasn't really listening, but it sounded bad for Cincinnati, and love me some Cincinnati Bearcats downfall. So give me the Louisville Cardinals.
Yeah, I think the stolen coach game element is something that is present for Louisville, and I think they come out and get a win here. Like Blake said, don't bet this one. It's a coin toss. If this was a confidence thing, this would be at the very, very bottom. It's going to be a total mess. But I have Louisville right now, just given all the storylines, everything going on. Next up, we have the Cricket Celebration Bowl between Jackson State and North Carolina Central. Never heard of that team until now. Jackson State favored by 16.5, even though Coach Prime is already in Boulder. I'll kick us off here. I am fading Jackson State. This is personal. It has nothing to do with Deion Sanders, but it has to do with how badly they screwed us in last year's Celebration Bowl. I don't know if y'all remember, we had them top of the list against North Carolina or South Carolina State. We thought they were going to kill them. It was an easy bet, an easy win in the bowl pick'ems, and they got blown off the field, embarrassed on national TV, and a loss that bad, that early, that completely screws everything up is something that I can never forget and I can never forgive. I don't care what the spread is. I was taking North Carolina Central no matter what. Especially with no Coach Prime, this team is gutted. Everybody's portaling. They don't have what made them special this year anymore. So give me NCC to cover 16.5. Ty?
Yeah, I have. It's nothing personal, but I just don't see how. I understand Jackson State is on paper the better team. I don't see how they. I don't see how they carry it through. Even with Deion, I guess apparently coaching in this one. Source appears to be my mother, actually. But even with him coaching in this one, I don't see the effort from the. I understand, you can give that whole, he'll hype them up, one last ride, they'll be really good. I don't see it. I think people are looking for their exit options. I mean, I think you're at the point now in Jackson State where the boat is very obviously sinking, and you're trying to get everyone to finish the game of chess that you have going, and everyone really has their eye on it, like, hey, I should probably get in line for the lifeboat. Maybe I don't need to care about this chess game. So I have Jackson State to not cover in this one.
Blake?
I'm backing Coach Prime. I still believe there's enough talent there. Just the amount of talent he has brought to that school is just a night and day better than just about every other school that they play. And so I just got to trust that talent comes through. Hopefully something like last year does not happen again. That's what I'm praying. I'm hoping he learns from his lesson. Really, when the spotlights are on him, he pulls through. I'm going to take Jackson State.
Fair enough. Let's move on to our next game. It's the Las Vegas Bowl, a bowl that honestly needs a little bit more love. It needs to be a little more elevated because it's a fun bowl game. This one's at the Big Roomba at Reliant Stadium, or not Reliant. I don't know what it's called, but it features two interesting teams, two teams that Blake, I feel like, has kind of liked, the Florida Gators and the Spooky Beavers of Oregon State, who are favored by 7.5. Blake, your thoughts on this game? I think this is a pretty wildly low line given Oregon State's ranking and maybe some opt-outs at Florida. Your thoughts?
Yeah, this is one of those games, like I was talking about the opening, that I would just traditionally slam for Oregon State. They have if you look at the rosters right now, they're just so much better. By the way, Oregon State finished their year getting that win at Oregon, comeback. They look spectacular. Their defense is clicking. Their offense is clicking. Really, everything is going right in Corvallis. And we talked about it, conference, the last week of the year, we loved Oregon State going into that. The Spooky Beavers really found a way to win a very impossible game. And you look at Florida. Florida has everybody opting out, and if they're not opting out, they're in the portal. They don't have a quarterback, really. Anthony Richardson has decided to opt out to go to the draft, which I am the biggest AR-15 Anthony Richardson stan on this podcast. Maybe outside of the state of Florida, if you were going to do any move, go to a different school and just allow your talents to flourish. Why the hell are you going to the NFL? I know you're a very raw prospect, and like that's the reason why I fell in love with Anthony Richardson, is just the potential is there, but Jesus, like, I don't think he's going to get drafted very high. You didn't put a lot on tape this year. When you lose your final games to Florida State and Vanderbilt, that's just such a bad look. I got to go Oregon State, and I feel like this is one that I overly bet, lose. Florida somehow keeps it close or wins, but I don't trust the quarterback room at Florida to get it done. They don't really have any more pieces. I just think Oregon State really has everything clicking right now. So give me the Spooky Beavs.
Ty?
Yeah, I like Oregon State. I feel like they have a lot to play for. I feel like they have a lot more buy-in from the players on the team. When I heard that Anthony Richardson was opting out to prepare for the NFL, I actually had to look up what they meant by that, because I was like, certainly he doesn't think he's going to be drafted into the National Football League, but apparently he does. So we'll see how that pans out. But I did say something that Blake said certainly did catch my ear, and I know I'm going long here, but it's just hearing about a mediocre quarterback who thinks he can do better, losing his final game to Florida State. That sounds like something that will occur again in the future, perhaps.
Oh my God.
So with that, I yield my time to Bobby.
Yeah, I'm going Oregon State here. Like everyone mentioned, the opt-in is there for Oregon State. I think they're a better team. I think they're going to go in and definitely beat Florida. We've seen Florida teams just not care about bowls like this, and this will be no exception, I don't think. So give me Oregon State -7.5. Next, we have the Jimmy Kimmel Los Angeles Bowl, featuring the Washington State Cougars, favored by 4.5 against the Fresno State Bulldogs. Now, looking at this one, I gotta say, I've been burnt on Washington State in the past. Hand up, that's happened. But you know who hasn't burnt me? The Fresno State Bulldogs, who pulled through and won the Mountain West, saved me from the 999 punishment almost single-handedly. I think that actually was the game that saved me, was that decision to back Jake Haener and the Bulldogs. So I'm going to back him again. Give me Fresno State plus 4.5 in the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl. Plus, I feel like in the LA Bowl, you tend to have good Mountain West performances against Pac-12 teams. Ty?
Yeah, I also like Fresno State in this one. It appears that most people do. Looking at ESPN is telling me that 62% of pickers have gone with Fresno State to I get cover with 4.5. They're not even favorites to win this one. I think Fresno State outright is what I like in this one. But who knows? Like we talked about in bowl games, no one really knows. Certainly not I.
Blake?
Yeah, I'm going with Fresno State. That Fresno State-Boise State battle were two teams that kind of had a rough start to the season, but really pulled it together at the end of the season. And I think Washington State's a solid side. I think Cam Ward's a great quarterback, and really they had some excellent games this season, but they do have some transfer portal guys that are really key. So Stribling and Ollie, who are their two top receivers, are both in the portal, so Cam Ward is basically going to be throwing to nobody. We haven't seen anybody enter the portal or opt out on the Fresno side. I think they're a little bit more motivated with a P5 opponent that I just have to side with Fresno. I think Jake Haener puts on one last stunning performance and is going to probably get drafted in the next few months. So give me the Bulldogs.
I got to say, Blake, before we move on, is the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl the most disgusting use of the Mouse's IP that we've seen out of ESPN recently?
It's pretty bad that they make a mockery of our sport and try to do whatever stunts or whatever they did last year. They're pieing people all over the place. It kind of looked like the Nickelodeon game, but a lot worse and not as good. Like, at least Nickelodeon can nail that cheesiness, but of course ESPN, ABC, Disney don't have that same taste, don't really know the culture as well. So this game's gonna be filled with a whole bunch of dumb stunts by a late night host that nobody ever watches, because nobody really watches late night shows anymore. So it's just going to be one big ad. It's going to suck, especially since I think this is going to be a great game to watch, but that's kind of what you get from Disney these days.
There you go. There you go. Noted. I had to give Blake some time to hate on Disney, ESPN, etc. as is tradition. Moving on to our next game, we are cruising through this. We have the Lending Tree Bowl. Southern Miss favored by 4.5 against Rice. I'm not. There's a Brett Favre joke in here somewhere, and I'm not going to make it. Blake, kick us off here. Who do you like in this game?
Yep, this one was pretty easy for me. Southern Miss. Southern Miss has covered, I think, 5 of the last 6 games. Like, they've been incredibly hot against the spread. Rice only got into a bowl game because they're smart, and their quarterback room, I don't think Rice's quarterbacks are very good in the first place, but they've had a lot of injury issues. We don't really know who's the starter coming out of that, for this game. They lost 4 of the final 5 games, so they positioned themselves great at the beginning of the season. Couldn't close to end the season. They just needed 1 game to actually stamp their ticket, but academics mean something still in college sports, and that's what gets a 5-7 team in whenever they don't have enough 6-6 teams. So give me Southern Miss. I just don't think Rice is very good.
Ty?
Let me tell y'all something about Southern Miss. And I'm saying this from experience. I've been to Southern Miss home games, actually. Fun fact. In fact, I most notably, I went to a Southern Miss home game against UAB before UAB was disbanded, which is very, very meta. But Southern Miss is the UNT of the South. Even people that go there, and people in Mississippi love college football. Even people that go to Southern Miss are not Southern Miss fans. Everyone that I think of that I can remember that went to Southern Miss, or people who were sort of like aligned with Southern Miss, were all fans of other teams. Like they were LSU fans, or they were Bama fans, or whatever. And this was before those teams were even good. No one. It's the UNT. But I have to go with my Southern Miss Eagles to the top. That's their cheer. I know that. But I think they have it against Rice. I just wanted to share that little personal connection to Southern Miss.
Nice little anecdote, if you will. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go with Southern Miss as well. They've been very, very sneaky good. They beat Tulane this year, one of the few teams to do that. I think that's something to say about them. And Rice, like Blake said, only reason they're there is because they're nerds. So let's move on to the next one. We've got the New Mexico Bowl featuring the SMU Mustangs against BYU. SMU favored by 2.5 here. This is tricky, but I'm going to go with SMU. I feel like they've kind of finished the season a little bit stronger than BYU, who has been kind of all over the place. It will basically be a BYU home game, but I don't think that matters that much. Give me SMU minus 2.5. Ty?
Yeah, I got to go with my man Tanner Mordecai. Shout out to we once had a great thing. We once had a great partnership. Tanner Mordecai and Austin Stogner now returning to OU, and we learned to code together, and I have to ride with him in this game against BYU. I really think that on paper, I'm surprised that SMU is favored in this one, but I like the Ponies to take the win and win it by 250 at least.
Blake?
I'm going to go opposite. I think this game's gross, but I will take our future conference mates in the BYU Cougars. This game's weird. So SMU, Rashee Rice is opting out of this bowl game to prepare for the NFL draft, which makes sense because Rashee Rice is their only receiver. He's a playmaker, kind of like Quentin Johnson style, but just on the G5 level. He's fantastic. He's a excellent receiver. When TCU played him this year, he presented a lot of problems, even for a team which we have the best corner in America, and then another All-American corner as well. So that's a big blow for me in SMU's mind. But if you look at BYU, Jaron Hall, supposedly, it's been really weird. He's injured, but they want him to play, but he's not really practicing all that much. The articles I've been reading about him have just been kind of all over the place. They just don't understand why he's not trying to play, and he's just kind of he's not preparing for the draft. He's not opting out, not entering the transfer portal. He's just kind of not playing, and so that concerns me. But both these teams' defenses suck, and so I'm like, if Jaron Hall plays, I think they're just slightly better than SMU when it comes to offense, with Rashee Rice being out. But this one is like, just kind of bet the over and just sit back and relax, because I think even with some of their weapons out, like, these defenses can't stop anything.
Yeah, this does feel like a fun over game for sure, for sure. Let's move on to our next game, the Fresno Bowl, between the North Texas Mean Green, whose logo I made way too large on this graphic, and the Boise State Broncos, who are favored by 4.5. Blake, take us away.
I think this is one of the easier ones on the slate. It's the Broncos. I know recency bias maybe, losing to Fresno State at home for the conference championship, but Fresno State's a pretty good team. And Boise State, as we saw kind of finishing the season, and mentioned earlier, covered 7 of their last 8 games. Like, they were fantastic down the stretch after they fired their OC, after Hank Bachmeier like kind of joined his OC in the transfer portal. Like, he was one of those guys that entered in like week 3, week 4, and they've been fantastic since. And North Texas, Seth Luttrell gone, interim coach. I don't know what the future of that program is. Like, I think Seth Luttrell for CUSA, or I guess it's gonna be American, it's a pretty good coach, but it's so funny. I read this, like, Austin Aune, or whoever their quarterback is, the 29-year-old, he decided he is not going to opt out of this game. He's going to play it and then enter the draft after. No way this man gets drafted. And if he does, I wanted this with Brandon Weeden. I wanted an NFL quarterback so old that after the rookie deal, even if they lit the league on fire, nobody wants to sign him, because they're like, you were out of your prime. Like, you were actually, we have empirical evidence that you were so old that there's like no way you could still possibly in your prime and just never get signed again. So I'm kind of hoping for a similar arc with them, but I just think Boise State's a significantly better team.
That
was a good segue. I have UNT. Why? Because of my 30-year-old man, Austin On. He has a full-on family. Like, he has children, and he's had a full career before. Like, he's literally playing to have fun at this point. I guess he declared for the draft. I mean, go and chase that money whenever you can. My man had an entire career in baseball, which is the reason why he's now playing college football at 29, 30 years old, whatever. Yeah, I think if you really look at it, UNT in a bad situation. I do not like a fired head coach situation. But I think UNT maybe made a pretty decent hire with Eric Morris, who was previously the offensive coordinator at Washington State. And I'm looking it up right now. It looks like he played was a receiver for Texas Tech from 04 to 08. So he certainly has some offensive credibility, and then heavy ties to Mike Leach, who we would be remiss if we did not mention, and we were going to mention him later in the podcast, who tragically passed away. But I like UNT in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Rest in peace, Mike Leach. We definitely want to do something to kind of go more in depth on that, either in this pod or when Mississippi State comes up, or its own thing. But just truly tragic passing. So that sucks. But I will say, to kind of change the mood a little bit, the new North Texas hire was nicknamed the Elf by Mike Leach. So that's pretty fun. Look, as much as I would like to pick the quarterback who's the same age as Trevor Knight, I'm going to go with Boise State in this one. 4.5, way too low. I think UNT gets pounded here, even though it's kind of close to home, all that good stuff. But